Hello, so I am here today thanks to Dorks Music for this next in our series of practice tips, and today I'm going to be talking about overtones on the saxophone and how you can practice them and how you can use them to help improve your playing. So for those of you that don't know what overtones are, they're sometimes referred to as harmonics, and this is when you use kind of a very low note on the saxophone, take a fingering, for example the bottom B flat, and then produce different notes using this fingering. So if I play a bottom B flat, I can go. Etc. And I can produce these different notes, and these are called overtones or harmonics. And the way you do this is by manipulating a few different things that are really crucial. There's the position of your tongue in your mouth and also the position of your throat and your voice box. And people always think you're cheating when you do those overtones. They think, no, that's not possible. So just to demonstrate that I'm not doing anything cheating at all, I just so happen to have a saxophone with me because I am a massive saxophone nerd that has no keys on it at all. So this is a saxophone body that has never been made. It's not anything special or fancy. This is actually a Jupiter student instrument. I'm just going to show you the whole range of overtones I can get on this. So because this has got no keys on it, it's equivalent to having all the keys shut, which would be a bottom B flat. So the fundamental note I'm going to get is a bottom B flat, and then I'll show you all the other notes that I can produce. So it goes. So that's the harmonic series that you get based on a bottom B flat on the saxophone. And if you ever get a chance to try one of these, it's well worth having a go and seeing how many of those different ones you can produce. But I'm just going to switch back to my normal saxophone now and pop this back together. And I'm going to show you a really good way to get started in producing these overtones. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about why they're so useful. So probably the easiest one to produce, first of all, is the one that's the same as an F with the octave key on. And a good way to start off is to practice playing that F, then switch your fingering to the bottom B flat and see if you can hold the note on the F. And things to think of as you're doing it. The main thing is actually trying to hear that sound in your head. And trying to keep your embouchure nice and stable, keep the throat relaxed, and almost imagine how it would feel like if you were singing that note. Another thing that's really useful is getting the correct tongue position. And what you find is the tongue position when you're playing the saxophone is similar to when you're whistling. And when you whistle up and down, if you give it a go now, you'll see that your tongue goes up and down in your mouth as you whistle, as you go. You'll feel that motion of your tongue going up and down, and it should be exactly the same on the saxophone. As you go up, your tongue will very gradually move up in the mouth. But I'll just show you now what happens if I start on that F with the octave key, then I switch to that bottom B flat fingering. Yeah. So that's a good starting point with these overtones. Once you've got the hang of that, I'd try the next one up, which is the B flat with the octave key. And again, you do that and switch to the bottom B flat fingering. So yeah. And then you can gradually try higher and higher. So the next one up would be a D, and then you get an F. And you might think that's all very well, but why are these useful? Why would I want to practice these? And the main thing you'll find is that practicing overtones really boosts your sound. It will give you a really nice, big, rich sound. Because essentially what happens when you're doing the overtones is you have to be putting the right note into the instrument. So you could be doing everything correct with your embouchure, your throat position, your tongue position to get that note to come out. If you're doing anything wrong, it's not going to work. You'll get probably a bottom B flat, or you'll get another kind of squeak instead. So if you can get everything set up perfectly for that note, then when you go back to the normal fingering, if you're still putting that note into the instrument, it's much richer and much more resonant than if you're kind of not doing it quite right, but the saxophone will help you out because you're playing the right fingering. So it's basically a way of training yourself to set everything up correctly for every individual note on the instrument so you can get the maximum resonance that you can out of it. There are two amazing resources if you want to look further into overtones. One of them is a book by Sigurd Rascher called Top Tones to the Saxophone, and that's got loads and loads of exercises. The book is called Top Tones because it talks about the Altissimo register, which is what we get when we go higher than the usual range in the saxophone. But to achieve that, it's using all the same techniques as we're using for these overtones. And in that book, probably about 90% of the book doesn't do anything on all the high notes. It's all about the overtones, lower down, some building all that control. So that's one book worth checking out. The other book that's excellent, that I was lucky enough to be an editor for, is a book called The Saxophone by John Harle. That's brilliant for all aspects of saxophone playing, but it's got a huge section on what he calls voicing, which is basically exactly that same thing, getting the control, being able to control the harmonics, and voicing each individual instrument on the saxophone. And both of those books have got loads and loads of exercises on them. One of them that's really good once you start to get the hang of these is one that's in John Harle's book, where you play scales starting on the lowest note of the instrument, and you go up as high as you can, but you always use the lowest possible fingering that you can. So what this would mean is if you played a B-flat major scale, starting from the bottom, you'd have to play the first octave pretty much normally. So you do a normal B-flat, C, D, E-flat, F, G, A. Then when you get to the B-flat, rather than using a normal B-flat fingering, you switch to the bottom B-flat fingering. And then for the C, you're using the bottom C fingering. For the D, you're using the D but without the octave key. Same for the E-flat, that's E-flat without the octave key. Then when you get to the F, that's reached kind of the next overtones up. So when you get to the F, you switch to a bottom B flat. Then for the G, you use a bottom C. For the A, you use a bottom D. Then we get to the next set of overtones again. So for the B flat there, you switch to a bottom B flat fingering, and then the C above that would be the bottom C fingering. B above that would be back to the bottom B flat, etc. Once you're getting that high, it's really useful to have the book so you can see them in front of you. But I'll just play you how that sounds to show you that it's possible to produce these and kind of the control you need for those. So go kind of. So you can see that's demonstrated kind of a whole B-flat major scale, but I'm always using the lowest fundamental note possible. And once you've mastered those fundamentals, you heard kind of when I did the harmonic series at the top, I actually went well up above the normal range of the saxophone. And once you've mastered those, kind of really the sky's the limit on the notes you can go up to in the Altissimo. I won't show you any fingerings because they're kind of individual to different saxophones, different people like different ones. If you're interested, search it on Google and you'll find loads and loads of different fingerings that different people use. Also, both the books I mentioned earlier had their own fingerings. But just to show you what's possible with that Altissimo, if I go... So that was all the way up to an F, an octave above the normal range of the saxophone. And all of that comes from the control that I've got with my tongue and the voice box and the throat, which has been developed through voicing exercises. This all links in as well, also with the ability to bend notes on the instrument. It's the same control. So if I were to play a top F, I can go... And again, it's using all the same types of control. So hopefully this has shown you why kind of getting into harmonics on the saxophone and practicing your overtones might be useful. It's something to go off and explore, see how you get on. At first, it can be very frustrating. You'll find it's very difficult to get the overtones at first, but once you get into it, you'll be able to build kind of a whole new level of control into your playing, and it'll give you a sound, kind of an extra resonance to give you a really, really rich and big sound.